The rat poison in New York City has stopped killing rats. It is still killing things. It is killing the hawks and the falcons and the red-tailed hawks that nest on the water towers. In February of 2024, it killed the most famous owl in America. His name was Flaco. He escaped the Central Park Zoo, and for 1 year a bird with a 6-foot wingspan lived loose over Manhattan, and the whole city fell in love with him. On the night of February 23rd, he came down in a courtyard on the Upper West Side, and he did not get up. He had hit a building. That part was obvious. So the pathologists at the Bronx Zoo opened him up anyway, and what they found in his body was not obvious at all. 4 different rat poisons. 4. In one bird. Now, your first instinct is probably the same as mine was. The bird found a dead rat, ate it, and got poisoned. Simple. Sad, but simple. Except that is not what an owl does. Flaco was a raptor. Raptors do not scavenge corpses off the sidewalk. They hunt. They take live prey, moving prey, something that runs. Everything Flaco ate in that year over Manhattan, he caught alive and killed himself. Hawks, falcons, owls, they are all the same. They kill their food. So follow that back. Every rat inside Flaco was a rat that had eaten a lethal dose of poison, and then walked out of the bait station and gone back to work. Still moving, still hunting the trash, still alive enough that a bird had to chase it down and take it. And here is the detail that makes this so much worse. A rat that eats anticoagulant poison and does not die from it still gets sick, it gets slow, it gets sluggish and clumsy, and stops moving like a healthy rat. Which makes it the easiest thing in the alley to catch. So the birds are not accidentally eating the poisoned ones, they are hunting the poisoned ones first, because the poisoned ones are the ones they can catch. The poison killed the owl. It did not kill the rats. Rat poison has exactly one job. The stuff under your building right now, in those black plastic bait stations you have walked past 10,000 times without looking at, is an anticoagulant. It works by shutting down the animal's ability to clot its own blood. A rat eats it, and over the following days it bleeds out internally, quietly, somewhere in a wall. That is the design. That is the entire point. So how does a rat eat a fatal dose of a chemical designed to kill it, and then keep walking around long enough for an owl to catch it and eat it, and take that poison into itself? Flaco was not the first. In 2021, Barry, the barred owl who lived in Central Park and had her own fan club, died after colliding with a park maintenance truck. The necropsy found a potentially lethal level of rodenticide in her system too, and it was not just the famous ones. The Wild Bird Fund, the wildlife hospital on the Upper West Side that takes in the city's broken birds, has said that rodenticide poisoning is behind the vast majority of the bird deaths they see. Not one poison. 3, 4 at a time, stacked in the same body. Hawks, falcons, owls. Everything in this city that eats a rat is dying of rat poison. And the rats are fine. Now, you might be thinking, so what? It is a rat. I do not touch rats. I have never touched a rat. Here is the problem with that. There is a disease called leptospirosis. It lives in rat urine. You do not need to touch a rat to get it. You need to touch something a rat has urinated on, and then touch your eye, or your mouth, or have a cut on your hand. A trash bag, a bin, a puddle, wet cardboard in a basement. It starts like a bad flu. Fever, headache, aching muscles. And then, in the serious cases, it goes after your kidneys and your liver, and it shuts them down. For most of this century, New York City averaged about 3 cases a year. 3. Then, in 2023, the city recorded 24 cases, the most it has ever seen in a single year. Between 2001 and 2023, 6 people in this city died of it. That is not a story about rats in the abstract. That is a story about the guy who takes the trash out barefoot in flip-flops because it is a hot night and he is only going to the curb. Most of the people who got it were middle-aged men. The largest cluster was in the Bronx. And they were not doing anything unusual. They were living in New York. The rats are not a nuisance you scroll past. They are a public health system that nobody voted for, and something is happening to them. To understand what, you have to go back to a chemical. In the 1950s, a compound called warfarin arrived in New York, and it changed everything. Before warfarin, killing rats was a grim, hands-on business of traps and dogs and poisons so violent that a rat could taste them and refuse the bait. Warfarin was different. It was tasteless. It was slow. A rat could eat it for days without connecting the food to the sickness, and that was the genius of it. No fear, no learning, no avoidance. Just a rat that eats, and then quietly bleeds to death inside a wall 3 days later. It worked. For a while, it worked beautifully. Cities across the world poured it into their basements and their subways and their alleys, and the rats died in their millions. And then, around 1971, reports started coming in from New York and from North Carolina and from California. Some of the rats were not dying. Now, here is the part where the story seems to solve itself, and I want you to follow it, because it is genuinely convincing, and because for most people, this is where the thinking stops. The reason New York has more rats than it used to is not a mystery at all. It is arithmetic. There are somewhere around 3 million rats in this city. That is roughly 1 rat for every 3 people, and it is a number that has climbed steeply over the past decade. And the reasons are not mysterious in the slightest. Winters got warmer. A rat does not hibernate, but a hard freeze suppresses it. It slows breeding, kills the weak, and closes the season. New York's winters have softened, and a softer winter means the rats never really stop. A single female can produce dozens of offspring a year, and those offspring can breed within a few months of being born. Give her another 6 warm weeks, and the math runs away from you like compound interest. Then came the food. This is a city that, for its entire history, took its garbage, put it in a soft plastic bag, and set it on the sidewalk overnight. Every night. Mountains of it. To a rat, a black trash bag is not garbage. It is a buffet with a paper wall around it. And then the pandemic came, and the city filled up with outdoor dining sheds, thousands of wooden structures with dark cavities underneath them, sitting directly on top of the street, next to the restaurants. A rat could not have designed better housing if you had given it a permit. So the city fought back, and it fought back sensibly. It appointed a rat czar. It started forcing buildings to put their garbage into hard containers with lids, actual bins, the way most of the developed world has done for decades. And it kept laying poison. Bait stations on every block, in every basement, behind every restaurant. Cut the food, kill the survivors. That is the plan. It is a good plan. It is the plan almost any of us would have come up with. And in that story, the poison is the reliable part. The poison is the thing that works. The problem is just that there is too much food and the winters are too warm, and if we fix those things, the poison will finish the job. That is the explanation. It holds together. It is the one you will hear on the news. Now let me take it away from you. In a recent study of rodents collected across New York, researchers found that more than 84% of them carried at least one genetic mutation associated with resistance to the anticoagulant poisons we use to kill them. 84%. Sit with that for a second, because it is not saying what you probably think it is saying. It is not saying the rats are getting tougher. It is saying the population has already changed. The mutation is not rare. The mutation is the norm. The rat in your alley is, more likely than not, carrying a version of a gene that lets it eat a dose that would have killed its great-grandfather and go on with its evening. And here is the part that gets me. We did that. Not by accident, exactly. By process. Think about what happens when you put poison down in an alley for 70 years. The first year, you kill 90-something% of the rats. Wonderful. But you do not kill all of them. A handful survive, because in any large population, there are always a few animals carrying some odd little variation in a gene that happens, by pure chance, to blunt the poison. Before you showed up, that variation meant nothing. It was noise. It gave them no advantage at all. Then you flooded their world with the one chemical that made it the most valuable thing an animal could own. Those survivors bred, and they bred with each other, because they were the only ones left. And every year you came back and poisoned the alley again, you were not just killing rats. You were running a filter. You were removing, with tremendous efficiency, every single rat that could not survive poison, and leaving behind, alive and fed, and holding the whole neighborhood to itself, every rat that could. Do that for 70 years, in a city of millions, and you have not been exterminating rats. You have been breeding them. The poison did not fail. The poison worked exactly the way it was designed to work. It killed, and every single thing it killed was a rat that could not handle it. We ran the most sustained, most thorough selective breeding program in the history of this city, on an animal we were not paying attention to, and we called it pest control. We did not fail to kill them, we built them. And go back, now, to that owl in the courtyard. Because if the rats are surviving the poison, but the poison is still inside them, then every poisoned rat that walks out of that bait station and keeps living is a loaded package moving through the city. And the animals that eat rats, the hawks, the falcons, the owls, are eating those packages. One might not be enough, but they eat them for weeks, and it accumulates. The chemical does not kill the rat anymore. It only kills the things that hunt the rat. We have spent 70 years poisoning New York's rats, and what we have actually accomplished is this. The rats are immune, and the predators are dead. We removed the only thing in this city that was killing rats for free, and we did it with the tool we bought to kill rats. Flaco did not die in spite of the city's rat program. In a way, he died of it. So the obvious question is whether we can simply build a better poison. We tried that. When warfarin resistance started showing up in the 1970s, the chemical companies went back to the lab and produced what are sometimes called second-generation anticoagulants, super warfarins, compounds so potent that a rat only has to feed once. Names like brodifacoum, bromadiolone, diphethiolone, and they worked. For decades now, they have been the backbone of rat control in this country, and they are almost certainly what was inside Flaco. But there is a problem sitting inside that solution, and it is a bad one. These new poisons work the same way the old one did. Same mechanism, same target, just stronger. And resistance to the old one does not necessarily disappear when you switch. Cases of cross-resistance have been reported, rats that shrug off more than one of them, and researchers have been careful to point out that resistance to the second generation may not work as simply as resistance to the first, which means we may not be fighting evolution. We may be feeding it. Every escalation is a new filter, applied to a population that has already proven, once, that it can pass through a filter. The rats have beaten one poison. We handed them a harder exam, and the exam does not stop the students who pass. This is the part that stops being about chemistry and starts being about something stranger. Researchers who have compared New York City rat skulls collected over roughly the last 120 years found that the rats are not shaped the way they used to be. The modern ones have longer noses, which has been read as an adaptation to cold, and their upper tooth rows are shorter, which has been read as an adaptation to a softer, richer diet. Our diet, the one we throw away. Read that again, because it is easy to skate over. The rats in this city have physically changed shape in a little over a century in response to us. Not the poison. Us. Our winters, our food, our garbage, our leftovers. And when scientists went looking in the genome of New York rats, they found signatures of selection scattered across it, not in random places either. In regions associated with metabolism, with diet, with the nervous system, with how the animal moves and behaves. Metabolism, diet, behavior, the brain. Nobody is claiming these animals have superpowers, and I want to be very clear about that, because there is a lot of nonsense online about mutant flood rats, and I am not selling you that. This is slower and quieter and much more unsettling than a monster. What the science actually suggests is that the brown rat of New York City is drifting away from the brown rat that arrived on ships here 200 years ago. It is becoming something adapted to a very specific environment: concrete, heat, poison, and endless human food. It is not becoming a monster. It is becoming a New Yorker. The third possibility is the one the city has quietly started to act on, and it is an admission of defeat dressed up as innovation. Follow the poison one more time. It fails to kill the rat. It succeeds in killing the hawk, the owl, the falcon. The Wild Bird Fund has said the birds they receive are not carrying one anticoagulant, but 3 or 4 at once, and the chemicals stay in a bird's body for months. So what happens to a city that removes its raptors? The rats do better, obviously. A hawk that hunts an alley every day is a free, tireless, unpaid exterminator that never needs a permit and never runs out of budget. Kill the hawk, and the alley belongs to the rats. Which means the poison is not neutral. It is not just useless. There is a real argument that it is running backwards, that every bait station is doing more damage to the rat's enemies than to the rat. And New York, to its credit, has noticed. The city council has moved toward rat birth control, bait that does not kill anything at all, containing cottonseed oil, which reduces fertility in rats that eat it repeatedly. Pilot zones, block by block, with control neighborhoods alongside them so somebody can actually measure whether it works. A council member pushed for it under a package of bills named after Flaco. Think about what that actually represents. After 70 years, one of the largest cities on Earth is now seriously discussing giving up on killing its rats and trying to talk them out of reproducing instead. That is not a strategy. That is a surrender with better branding. Here is where the honest people stop talking, and I think the silence is the scariest part of this whole story. Nobody knows how many rats are in New York City. Not really. The 3 million figure that gets repeated everywhere is an estimate, and the truth is that no one has counted them and no one can. They live in the walls, under the street, in the tunnels, in the dark. You cannot survey an animal that has spent 2 centuries learning not to be seen by you. Nobody knows where the resistance ends. We know the mutations are widespread. We do not know what happens when the second generation of poisons goes the way of the first, and we do not have a third generation waiting. Nobody knows what else is changing. The genome scans point at metabolism and behavior and the nervous system, and pointing is all they do. Something is being selected for in those animals. We can see the fingerprints. We cannot yet read them. And nobody knows whether the contraceptives will work at scale, in a city this size, on a population this large, with this much food. The pilots are running right now. The results are not in. What we do know is this. We introduced a poison. The poison removed every rat that could not survive it. What is left is a population that mostly can, living in a city where the winters no longer stop it, eating an endless supply of our food, in a landscape from which we have systematically removed nearly everything that hunts it. We did every step of that ourselves. Tonight, somewhere under a black bait station on a street you have walked down 100 times, a rat is going to eat a block of poison that would have killed its ancestors, and then it is going to go back out and finish its evening. Above it, on a ledge, there may be a hawk watching, and if that hawk is lucky enough to catch it, that hawk will take the poison into its own body and carry it for 100 days, and maybe for the rest of a life that is now shorter than it should be. Neither of them chose any of this. We ran this experiment on both of them for 70 years without ever once calling it an experiment. And the result is out there right now, in the walls, under the street, moving in the dark, in numbers nobody can count, carrying a gene that we handed it. So I want to ask you something. If poison does not work anymore, and the predators that would have done it for free are dead, and the winters have stopped helping, then what exactly is left? Because I do not have a good answer, and neither, at the moment, does New York. If you want to see what happens when a city loses this fight completely, watch the one on your screen now. And if you have ever seen something in this city you could not explain, a rat that was too big, or too calm, or too unafraid of you, Tell me where you were standing. This story is nowhere near finished, and I would rather you were here when the rest of it comes out.